Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Always Out of Market NFL podcast. Woo! We're in the Pro Bowl week, everybody's favorite week of the season. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Everybody, we've all been talking about nonstop before we got on this call how we're going to just hunker down, get some popcorn, get under a blanket, and watch some flag football later today. And we're so excited. But yeah, no, it's been a good year-ish. I mean, I say that, not really. I'm fucking pissed about the end of the year, honestly. But, we're all here. It's me, Ryan, as usual, pissed about the Super Bowl. We've got Jason down here, also pissed about the Super Bowl for the other reason, because, we both have division rivals there. And then we have Matthew, who I don't know. Are you pissed about the Super Bowl, Matthew?
No, the Lions didn't make it, so.
Oh, well, there you go. So
That's my
Matthew's fine
Super
with
Bowl.
it. And then, Steven, I think you're also not happy with the Super Bowl either. So.
Not really. I kind of wanted a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl in the end.
And then we got old Kansas Gavin over here, is probably wetting his pants because he gets to see his Chiefs in the Super Bowl,
Always a fan of seeing a powerhouse in the Super Bowl and the 49ers. We'll just see how the Chiefs play out. I do like being in this being in the state whenever they're going there. It's fun to have everybody be happy right now.
Yeah. I was saying before the podcast started, honestly, though, like if you could have asked me at the beginning of the season which two teams I would least want to see in the Super Bowl, it would be the current two teams who are going to the Super Bowl this year. Like, hands down, no competition. These top two teams were the teams I would not want to see there, and that's what happened. So,
lo and behold,
I think a lot of America would agree with you there, Ryan, based on what you see online.
Especially NFC West non-49er fans, I don't think would have want this at all because everybody already hates the Chiefs. So, there are some 49er sympathizers out there.
We'll talk about it more next week when we actually go over the bracket and stuff. But I will say, Gavin, just a little spoiler: if the Chiefs win, you win the bracket, which means you win everything. So definitely not rooting for the Chiefs. At most, it'll be me, Matthew, or you who wins.
Yeah,
me and Matthew versus
you and Matthew.
Yeah. So.
Well, the script is written for me to win this year, I guess. I don't know what's going on.
So yeah, Gavin
purely luck.
He also just won. We've been doing a franchise league with Madden with all of us except for Steven in the podcast, and Gavin just won that as well. He beat me in the Super Bowl. So if the fucking Chiefs win, not only do the Chiefs win again, but Gavin will win every goddamn thing football related this year. It's crazy.
I think it's only fair that you get kicked off the podcast if you sweep.
You have a handicap next year where you don't get to pick games until week 3.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh my God.
If you end up winning still though, then it'd be even more embarrassing.
I think I might be able to catch up with Matthew if I did that, but still.
Oh. Hey Matthew, you did okay. You did good the last several weeks.
Better than last year, yeah.
Yeah.
Got over 50%.
All right.
That dreadful area.
How about we get on to some news before we start our awards? We're going to do awards since the awards thing is on Thursday this upcoming week. We're going to do our own awards. It does not necessarily reflect who we think is going to actually win. It's who we personally pick, except for one of Gavin's picks, which you'll see in a minute when we get there. But yeah, let's talk about news first. What we got, Jason?
Not a lot. We had a lot of hirings for like coordinating positions and like quarterback coaches, special teams coaches, all the stuff that we don't really want to go over necessarily in depth. But we could talk about the Commanders and the Seahawks have their head coaches, so every head coaching spot has been filled. The Commanders hired Dan Quinn, and the Seahawks hired Mike McDonald. So who do we want to talk? I guess we want to talk about the Commanders first with Dan Quinn, and we can let Ryan talk about the Seahawks after.
I think that works. I want to say it definitely feels like the Commanders got their second option, or maybe not even their second, because they were holding out for Ben Johnson, I think. And then he's like, nah, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to come back to the Lions for another year, which that's great news for the Lions, but sucks for the Commanders.
Yeah. I think I would have also stayed as the offensive coordinator for the Lions rather than be the head coach of the Commanders as well.
Oh, you don't want to go and work in FedEx Field, the best field of all time?
Not at all. And it's not just the field. It's like isn't like the overall just player happiness and their like facilities the worst at the Commanders in general.
Yes.
Oh, 100%. Yeah,
So-
they've had studies that they do across the league now with the NFLPA that has shown that the Washington Commanders is consistently ranked among the lowest, like top 3 lowest, almost across the board. Also, one thing you have to look at, if you're Ben Johnson, did he want to go into a scenario where Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett, what was it, Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett are fighting over your starting quarterback position? You got Scary Terry at the wide receiver. Your running back one is Brian Robinson. I mean, you don't really have a lot of weapons there. There's nothing to really build with. Your defense was good, and then you traded away your 2 best edge rushers. So now, what would you go into that with?
They have something to build with, and that is the number 2 pick in the draft this year. So
And
basically cream of the crop of who they want in the draft.
no, and I was about to say I was going to say that, but also I was going to say they also have the most salary cap space for this next year,
Yep.
so they can go crazy with free agency if they had to. Honestly, looking at it from just a roster standpoint, I think the Commanders is actually in an ideal spot to go. It's just all the other stuff, and then obviously a brand new organization, brand new owners and everything. A lot of unknowns there. And from what I saw, rumors were that Ben Johnson, when he interviewed with them, just didn't like the way it felt. So, if you don't have that, then yeah, you probably want to walk away from it.
Yep.
You got to hope if you're going to go into a scenario like that, you're going to get backing from that front office, which I don't think they've shown a real true backing of their head coaches in the past. And if you're going to go into that, I didn't know that they had sucked that bad that they got the number 2 overall pick. That shows how much I've really focused on the draft this year. But having the number 2 overall pick doesn't matter if your front office is going to say like, "Hey, we want this quarterback," and you can check and scout and be like, "Yeah, I think that Jaden Daniels is probably the best number 2 overall quarterback in this draft." I don't actually believe that fully. I don't know the tape right now.
It might
But
be
if they
3.
sat there and saw that, he might be. I think he's actually going 3.
No, I'm saying I think it might be 3 that the Commanders have, because I think maybe the Patriots have 2. I know we know the Bears have the first one. I can't remember. Yeah.
It might be 3. It's 2 or 3.
Yeah, because I know the Cardinals pick 4 and the Chargers pick 5, so I think it's 2 or 3. But either way, yeah, you're gonna have some good options there now. But then again, it's like what we said before. No matter what, you might have a bust of a player on your hands. So it's just gonna depend on how they work out. But I will say Dan Quinn, I initially thought that he was going to go back to the Seahawks because of his connections, but I honestly think the Seahawks got the better option, in my opinion. But yeah, just especially for Dan Quinn to go back and it's like, all right, congratulations, you were not who we wanted, but you're who we get. So starting off on the wrong foot there, I feel like. But what anything else y'all want to add on that?
I think we pretty much touched on everything that I would have said. So,
okay. Well,
we'll just see how he rolls.
Yeah,
I mean,
we'll see.
That's the only thing you can do there.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Now let's talk about the Seahawks.
Yeah, so very, very happy with our pick. That was who I wanted from I think I mentioned it like last week or so. That's who I was, hoping we get, and we ended up getting him. Obviously, Dan Quinn was great. I mean, when he was the Seahawks defensive coordinator, he was Legion of Boom defensive coordinator. He was awesome, but he already has had a chance to go be a head coach before with the Falcons. He went to the Super Bowl and he choked it. I mean, he didn't really do much with the Falcons that was that amazing. And if you just look at the comparison without even that factor in, the comparison between the Ravens defense and the Cowboys defense, yes, they were both amazing defenses, but just individual, like obviously Cowboys got blown out by the fucking Packers and when it mattered the most. So once again, Dan Quinn failing when it matters the most. And the Ravens, even though they didn't end up losing, they didn't let the Chiefs get that many points. And just going straight from a Seahawks perspective, we played both the Ravens and the Cowboys this year. We've got up like 35 points in the Cowboys, and we got 3 against the Ravens. So it's like, I mean, once again, probably the Ravens had more defensive like players and stuff too, but I think just in general, Mike McDonald was a better choice. And he's also
the only thing I was going to say is. Go ahead, Matthew. Sorry.
I was just going to say you also went from the oldest to the youngest head coach.
Yes, that's what I was going to point. So. Yeah, literally Mike or not? Is it Mike McDonald? Yeah, Mike. I refer to his first name. Yes. He is literally half the age of Pete Carroll, so like 36, whereas Pete Carroll was 72. So
I was just gonna say like the only thing that I would worry about is and this is a big problem from people going from coordinator to head coach is even if they were an amazing coordinator doesn't necessarily mean they'll be a good head coach, and then that works the other way. Even if they were just coordinator, they may be an incredible head coach. You just don't know. But overall, just looking at it that way, yes, I think y'all got the best pick.
But that's the thing. We've also, like what I said, Dan Quinn has been a head coach before, and he
Yeah,
wasn't that amazing of
Yeah.
a head coach.
and that's
So,
That's
true.
that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
yeah,
And I see Gavin's
Yeah.
freaking out over there, but he hasn't proven
That's-
himself as a head coach yet. We've had that so many times where people just get signed on as a head coach and then they do nothing because they've never had the responsibility of being a head coach.
That's one of the most frustrating things. I mean, I already went on this rant last year. I'm not going on the rant again fully, but why hire somebody that's already had the job as a head coach in the NFL and showed that he failed with great coordinators, by the way? I mean, Kyle Shanahan was literally Dan Quinn's offensive coordinator. Dan Quinn was a great defensive minded head coach. He had one of the best offensive coordinators in the league, and they weren't able to finish off a Super Bowl with a 25-point lead. Why would you hire him whenever you have two proven coaching options in this vacancy right now? Yes, they had bad teams last year. Mike Vrabel had zero support from his front office, and Bill Belichick is literally one of the greatest coaches of all time statistically. Why would you not? I mean, as the Commanders, I understand why neither one of these teams took Bill Belichick. But when you have Mike Vrabel that is sitting right there, I don't get the idea of passing on him and taking somebody else that's either unproven. In the Seahawks case, I would prefer the unproven in the Seahawks case rather than taking Dan Quinn over Mike Vrabel. I would 1000% say Mike Vrabel is 100% a better head coach than Dan Quinn any day of the week. I don't get taking him over Mike Vrabel right now.
I think the problem with Vrabel, because of course, as I said, I did not want us to fire Vrabel. I like the way things have turned out with our new staff and all that, but still, I would have liked to have seen him next year with all that salary cap space and having, basically a brand new roster if need be. But it didn't flow that way, and we know that there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't know all the details about. We know that the owners all talk to each other, so I feel like that might have hurt Vrabel. I did think he was going to get another head coach position. I thought like he would be on the market for only 5 minutes basically, and then he would get another job with all the coaching carousel going on. But I'm wondering if something got leaked between the owners about what was going on behind the scenes, because it did seem like he really wanted to basically control the whole thing. Maybe that's what scared a bunch of these other teams away, because they don't want somebody that has that kind of mindset. But yeah, he's a great head coach, so it's
Yeah.
surprising. I'm sure we'll see him next year.
Vrabel would have been. I feel fine. I'm glad we got Mike McDonald over Vrabel, though. I mean, obviously over Dan Quinn and everything as well. But like I said, Vrabel is a proven pretty good head coach. It's just it's kind of what Steven's point on the fucking like kind of all the weird stuff going on behind the scenes. I don't know if I fully know how involved he was in that, and I don't want to like risk that at going up to the Seahawks and like all that shit. And it is kind of weird how he went to the Patriots midseason and was like, we're gonna win it this year, like talking about we as in the Patriots aspect. That was really weird.
We know that rubbed the owner the wrong way, the way he talked about it. But I mean, it didn't bother me that much.
If I was a Titans fan, it would have bothered me, honestly. If my head coach went to another team and was like, we're going to do great talking about the other team, it's like, you're not a part of them anymore.
Yeah.
You're our person now. Like, you're our family. Like, that's like basically like going back to your ex and saying, like just have like a one night stand with your ex for a little bit. It's like, no, you're with us now.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Just watching the actual footage of it, it doesn't look as bad as people have described it to be, and I think that's part of the problem. Because I actually watched the thing and I was like, okay, it doesn't sound like he's really saying it in that way of I'm a part of this team. It was just more like y'all, we need to get out there and win or whatever. But I'll say too,
he is a part of the team though. He was getting inducted into the Ring of Honor that day.
I mean, he is a big part of that big long run of winning Patriots team, so it makes sense. But I also think the other thing that I think this is something that Vrabel does have a problem with is too many internal hires. So I think he would hire his buddies and then just keep promoting him. Like, remember last year, I wasn't very excited about him. Once he got rid of Todd Downing after putting up with him for way too long, he took too long to can him, and then we just brought in Tim Kelly, who was another internal hire. I think he should have looked externally, and I think that's something that the Titans organization wanted, was just new perspectives, and he was kind of against that. So that's another thing that I think other teams may have been scared about. But once again, I'm saying all of this saying that I still think we'll see him again next year. I did think that we would see him this year too, but it didn't work out that way.
I think there's going to be a lot of coaching hires from this cycle that are not going to pan out. I think there's going to be a lot of them. They're going to look back and they're going to regret the decision to not take the chance on Mike Vrabel. And if you have a more proven team, I have a feeling there's going to be some squads that are going to regret not getting Bill Belichick. I think there was only 2 technical spots that Bill Belichick could have gone right now, and it would have made complete sense. And it would have been the Chargers and it would have been Dallas. The Chargers got a good guy with Harbaugh. They're not going to regret that decision. They're going to be happy next year whenever it comes around, unless Herbo ends up being just a complete folding under pressure type of quarterback, and we just haven't realized it because he's had clowns for head coaches. But Dallas, I have a feeling, the perennial 12-5, it's great. It looks really good on paper, but do you want to win the regular season or do you want to win in the playoffs? And whenever you have an opposing team that has got more home wins at your stadium in the playoffs than you do, maybe you should try and think about bringing in the greatest coach of all time to try and change the culture up a little bit in there.
I thought McCarthy was going to be gone after
I mean,
blowing that to the Packers. I really did.
we got rid of him for a reason. And it's the same reason that's happening right now for the Cowboys. He's just not that good of a head coach. He won us a Super Bowl, but we also had a God squad that season. So
I think what would you have? Aaron Rodgers and like 5 all pros on the defense. You
Jordy
still have 2 Hall of
Nelson,
Fame wide receivers.
Donald
Yes.
Driver. Yeah, I mean, it was a squad.
It's hard to not win a Super Bowl with that squad.
Yeah. He didn't do anything else for us most of the time he was there, so.
Oh, he kept you guys in the conversation during the regular season, just like he's doing right now with the Cowboys. He's keeping the Cowboys fans happy for the regular season, but as soon as he gets to the playoffs, time and time again, he shows his teams tend to fold. Why do we keep hiring these older coaches that have already done this and failed and thinking it's going to work somewhere else? I'm not going back on this rant again. We're going to keep pushing forward. We have postseason awards to be able to talk about. But
Postseason award.
everybody already knows this irritates me. Everybody already knows that irritates me.
Next
This is one
year,
of the worst things about the NFL.
bold prediction: next year, Mike McDaniel gets fired for some reason. Frank Reich is y'all's new head
God.
coach.
Bold prediction.
Mike
Vrabel-
Fuck that.
Mike Vrabel will be the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2025.
Ooh.
Honestly, I
That
can
is
see it.
Very bold one. That is a very bold one.
He does have history at the Steelers too now. We got to remember
Mike
that.
Tomlin's there until he decides to leave.
And it'll be after this upcoming season.
Yeah, we talk about what you talk about the Cowboys winning the regular season. How about the Steelers just always just barely making the playoffs and then not do anything with it? So
You're welcome for that this year. NFL.
I don't think it's not coaching in Pittsburgh though.
No, it's not.
The roster
is.
is really bad.
They have way more problems than Mike Tomlin.
The fact that he was able to
isn't a problem.
Mike Tomlin is the solution.
Yeah,
he
what I'm
took
saying.
a
I don't
very
think
bad roster and made it that far. I got to give him credit for that.
Exactly. That's why I don't think that he's gonna. Why? I can't even think of the other guy we were talking about is going to be the coach next. Yeah, Vrabel is going to be the coach. I think the Steelers are staying with Tomlin, but
is Tomlin staying with the Steelers?
I mean, I don't see why he would leave.
Tomlin
You've had 17 subpar seasons. Why not make it another couple?
Well, I'm saying I'm not saying because he's going to get fired. I'm saying he's going to retire.
Possibly. I don't know.
He's not bad.
It's still so funny. I've watched the clip so many times of him at that press conference, and the person starts asking about his contract about to run off, and he just leaves. He's like, "No,
Leaves.
I'm just not dealing with this."
And then the next day he comes back. I'm in a better mood if you want to talk about
Yeah.
contracts.
All right. Well, do we want to say anything else news-wise, or are we ready to do some awards?
I'm ready to do these awards.
I'm ready
Right.
to look into it. Let's do it. Let's dive in.
So, as I said, this is our own personal awards. It's not necessarily who we think is actually going to win. In most cases, I guess. But I think we had some diversity. There's a few that's only like maybe 2 or 3 people are involved, and then some get several different awards. But we got one that's like we almost had a full 6 different options. And then of course Tyler isn't here, but he did his awards with us too. So, all right,
Should
let's
have
go ahead.
given us all a tuxedo body.
Oh, you'll see. There's a theme here,
Ah,
but
okay.
the first slide doesn't have as much. But let's move on to the game of the year. This slide is very bright. Sorry about that. But
It is.
yeah, Ryan picked the Seahawks Eagles game. Makes sense. Tyler
I was
go ahead.
I was gonna pick the Cowboys Packers just because it was my favorite game of the season, but it wasn't the best game of the season.
Now
Okay.
there's some bias here.
Well, okay. Do I get a chance to defend myself at all?
I was
are we gonna
going
go
to
through
list them all
okay.
out, and then we were
Okay.
going to talk about them.
Let's just
So-
rip on
Yeah.
Ryan's pick
Y'all
before I
are
get a chance.
y'all are going at each other's throats
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah, no. So let me finish. So we got the Seahawks Eagles for Ryan. We got the Dolphins Titans game for Jason and Tyler. Gavin picked the Browns Colts game. I picked the Rams Ravens game that went to overtime, and then Matthew was the only one who picked a postseason game, being the wild card round for the Lions Rams, which was also, in my opinion, a good pick. So I actually think all these games were good picks. Obviously, we're talking about some bias, but we'll go ahead and start with you, Ryan. Why did you pick the Seahawks Eagles?
I mean, yeah, so there is obvious bias in there because I was thinking, I mean, y'all know I don't watch as much of the football as y'all do. I literally watch like the Seahawks play usually, and I maybe watch 1 or 2 other games in the background. So, like, obviously, I'm not gonna say my game of the year was a game I barely like paid attention to. So yeah, that's biased with that. But also, in my defense, this was a fucking great game in that Seahawks had their backup quarterback in. Eagles were on a 2-game losing streak, but they were still 10-4, and Seahawks were on a 4-game losing streak. And so, like, nobody expected us to come win that.
I will give it to you that it was the turning point of the Eagles season, was losing
Yeah.
that game. But
And
I can
it
see where
ended,
you're coming from.
yeah, and it was a classic, like, good game where it ended, like, we were down, we went on an amazing drive. Drew Lock fucking just came out of nowhere and met it with fucking JSN and an amazing end zone pass to, like, fucking take the lead. And then Julian Love came through and fucking intercepted Jalen Hurts on the next drive to end the game and squash the Eagles' hopes of a comeback. Like, it was a honestly phenomenal game. And yes, I have bias because, of course. If I had been really biased, though, I would have picked the fucking Seahawks Titans game because I actually went to that game and it was amazing to watch us win in person. But yeah.
I will say it's crazy to me that the final for the Seahawks Eagles game. I cannot believe the Eagles only needed to get like a certain amount of yards, not that many yards to get into field goal range. Instead, they threw it deep downfield.
Yeah.
For the interception. I'm like, why would you call that? Like, why would you run that type of play there? And I think Sirianni said that he was trying to get them to draw offside or not offsides, pass interference, and it's like, well, clearly that didn't work. So bad choices around, and yeah, this was definitely a big moment for the Eagles, seeing their downfall, and yeah, they were
like. Still, even at this point, they were, purportedly still the top team in the league, even though they were on a 2-game lose streak because they still, I think, had the best record at that point. And so, yeah, they were still, this is before they're losing 5 out of 6 last games where we know how shit they were at the end of the season now. So.
All right, let's move on. We don't have Tyler here, but we've got Jason, of course, who also picked this game. The Titans playing the Dolphins. The only finally the Titans got a away game win. This was their like only one basically this entire year. So what you got, Jason?
I mean, it's just the story of the comeback. Like, I mean, it looked like the Titans were going to lose. It was pretty in hand. They were going to lose the game, and lo and behold, look at the final score. They managed to come back and win. Like you said, it was their first road win in a year, basically.
Since the Packers game last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Y'all could only
Uh,
be podcast teams away, apparently.
Apparently.
And they beat a team that at the time was also a top team in the league, being the Dolphins. So,
Yep.
I mean,
we absolutely blew y'all's chance to win the division and get that 1 seed. So, yeah. Sorry, Kevin. I will say
the 1 seed less hurts. It's the fact that thinking about this game, I know that that's what cost us being able to win the AFC East from the Bills, and also cost us a chance of being able to win a playoff game. Because I have a feeling if we play one in Hard Rock Stadium in the postseason, we actually have a chance to win it instead of we played in negative 29-degree weather. So, not going to be the
classic
best for guys down from Miami.
classic to not being able to play in the cold. Yeah.
And to add on to a
Yeah.
Gavin's history, that was like right after that week where you had that long speech about watching the Titans lose to the Dolphins, and you can't wait to destroy the Titans this week, and all this stuff. The
Yep.
whole speech,
Yep.
and then y'all still fucking lost.
What was it? 3 minutes, 13 seconds to go in the game. Titans are still down by 2 possessions. They managed to score. Good for them. Should run out the clock and win the game. How in the hell does Will Levis legacy drives on
It
the Dolphins
was.
dome piece?
Look,
Prime
y'all,
time in Hard Rock?
y'all got to remember though the earlier start to that game, the Titans were outplaying the Dolphins too. What really was killing them is they had the turnover problems that then ended up making them have to come back because we had Will Levis doing that toss to Henry and it was a fumble and the Dolphins recovered and then he had a bad pick. There were a lot of things that managed to make us lose that game and then at that point it's like, okay, yeah, we blew it. But then all of a sudden Will Levis decided to ball out again and then played out of his mind, and them going for the, we joke about the analytics always saying to go for it on 4th down, and the analytics always saying to go for 2, if you're down by 2 scores or whatever. That time it did work. We went for 2, we got it, and then we were going for the win with just an extra point the next time. So that time analytics actually helped us out. Since they actually started using a little bit more analytics this year, because the Titans, up to this point, last year had basically rejected the whole analytics thing. So, hell of a game. But we'll move on. We've talked enough about this one. Let's go on to how about the Browns at the Colts? Gavin, you picked that for Game of the Year.
It is the most random game to possibly pick for Game of the Year, and it's the most innocuous thing that you could ever possibly see on this list. But let me tell you what I saw when I watched this game. Myles Garrett single-handedly took over this game and won it for the Browns. In the 4th quarter, I think I saw 6 different lead changes. And I'm just watching this go through. Garner Minshew going off against, I'm trying to remember, was it Deshaun Watson? Yes, in his last game before he got fully hurt and out for the season. I got to see flashes of the former Deshaun Watson actually coming out and playing a decent game of football in the second half. Garner Minshew was out there actually throwing dots to receivers. The whole time, I had a pick and I had money on the Browns, and me and my brother were also picking the Browns together for these like little in-season pick'em tournament thing that we were doing. So I'm even more invested in the game. For me, just watching how much this game went up and down with scores. As a fan, I couldn't imagine being a Colts or Browns fan watching that game. It was just heart attack city. One of the most pure, fun games of football that you could possibly watch. If you guys ever get a chance to go back and watch the highlights from that game, it's amazing to see everything that went down in it. Just the storyline of how much it spiked with teams being able to win probability. Oh my God. It was just a fun game to watch. And just randomly happened, and I'm not mistaken, week 6, just a random week 6 matchup that I just ended up turning on, and it was one of the best games of football I saw this year.
And Jason watched that game at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think this is the game. I'm pretty sure that's the game I picked in the midseason awards for Game of the Year.
That's the one that
Oh,
got
it was amazing. It was amazing to watch.
it ended on the penalty. I want to give it's something with the Colts. I can't remember exactly what the penalty was, but they should have stopped the Browns or something, and it was a penalty, so they got a first. Some controversy at the end.
Wasn't that also the week where we all did incredibly awful on our picks?
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
because
so.
I was
Yes,
at Buffalo Wild Wings
yes.
with y'all too. I remember that.
Yep.
All right, you ready to move on to the next one? We got the Rams Ravens game, and that's what I picked for Game of the Year. This one, just for some reason, this game is stuck with me. I just remember it well, and that's kind of why I picked it. I didn't even go through a bunch of games to decide. I just knew this was the game I wanted to do, just because I remember watching this and just seeing both offenses just playing out of their mind. It was obvious. I mean, you see the score. It wasn't as good as the Browns Colts game when it comes to scoring, but it's pretty close. And then just the fact that it came down to overtime, and it came down to I think it was either a kickoff or a punt return for a touchdown by the Ravens. And this is mostly just a fantasy bias. I had the Ravens defense, and obviously you see based on the Rams score, the defense wasn't doing great for fantasy, but then they managed to save it at the very end with the getting the punt return touchdown, I think it was. So this is why I picked this game, and just both these teams, like the Rams this year was an incredibly fun team to watch for their offense, and then same for the Ravens. And then obviously didn't work out for either of them in the playoffs, but I did think both of them could have a long run, which I guess the Ravens did have a decent run, made it all the way to the championship game. But of course, the Rams got eliminated in the first week, which is actually also on here. I don't know if y'all want to say anything else about the Rams Ravens game. No,
I didn't have much invested in that one now.
But let's talk about. I know probably all of us watched this game. Let's talk about Matthew's pick, which this is also a really good pick for Game of the Year. The only postseason game on here, the wild card round, the Rams taking on the Lions in the playoffs.
So I know all the awards are regular season, so this game will not win regardless. But I think that they should start adding postseason to it for the reason of all these amazing postseason games. And you don't get the awards till right at the Super Bowl anyway, so I don't see why not add them in. But regardless, Matthew Stafford just produces amazing games. Everything he does, he just leads his team out there, plays great. They looked amazing up until they didn't. Sucks that it had to go the opposite way, because I would have. I know it is my pick already, but it would have 100% been my pick if they knocked the Lions out of the Super Bowl, or out of the playoffs round one. But regardless, it was a great game, fresh on my mind. I almost still went with a Lions game and went with my original pick of the Chiefs Lions, because it was just an incredible game, and it was week 1.
The start of the season, right there.
Yeah. Not even week 1. It was really week 0, because it was the Thursday game before.
Yeah.
But regardless, this game was just fresh on my mind. I mean, we didn't watch it about 2 weeks ago or something, so I don't have a whole lot to say about it.
I just think the storyline for this game is so incredible. Just because, you got, as I was talking about it before we started the podcast, I think this is one of the best trades of all time between teams, the Stafford Goff trade, because it really benefited both teams. Stafford went to the Rams, got himself a Super Bowl, and then not only did the Lions get Goff, they also got several picks out of it, which ended up turning into some big players that, produced well this year. So obviously the Lions won. This is their first ever playoff game at home too. It's just, there's so much that happened in this game, and I think that's 90%. It's not really the score. It's not really the game itself. It's more just the storyline around this game, which is so incredible.
I just want to throw this out there. A lot of people don't bring it up. Goff can ball.
He is good.
Whenever this trade went down, everybody talked about how deeply downgraded that the Lions went. And yes, Goff is not going to be able to throw it around the yard like Matt Stafford can, because he can make some throws that 99.9% of quarterbacks in the NFL can't make. But Jared Goff has been balling out. The storyline, like Steven just said, for this game was just immaculate. It's just absolute perfection. To see the hero of Detroit come in and have to try and steal the heart, just go right through the heart of Detroit as they try and go on their first playoff run. Detroit being able to pull it off in the end and being able to get that first playoff dub in 30 years. I mean, that's just, I mean, it. If there was postseason games in the awards, this definitely would have to be it.
I think so too. All right. That's it for this, y'all. Ready to move on to the next award? Okay. So, moving on. We're going to do Coach of the Year next. And we have a few different options here. You got Dan Campbell, which Ryan picked Dan Campbell. You got most of us picking D'Amico Ryans. And then Kevin Stefanski was Jason's pick. So, of course, you got the Lions head coach, the Texans head coach, and the Browns head coach. Let's start with D'Amico Ryans. So, before Ryan goes, do I have, hold on. Hold on, 1 second. I made an error.
Dan Campbell.
I must have moved it. Hold on.
I can just talk about mine as a throwback later on in the slide. Just once we're talking about offensive player of the year, I'll talk about Dan Campbell.
I delete it by accident.
I can just talk about him.
All right, I don't have the Dan Campbell slide. Whoops.
You definitely had one earlier, though. I saw
it. I definitely did. I must have deleted it by accident. But anyway,
I'll pull up the important stats that were on the slide.
Go nuts, Ryan, while he's pulling that stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly surprised I'm the only one who went with Dan Campbell. I mean, yes, all three of these coaches did great this year. They all did. And obviously, D'Amico Ryans being a rookie head coach and everything is awesome. But, I mean, Dan Campbell just was basically the savior of Detroit this year. I mean, yes, they didn't make it past the championship, but they made it to the fucking NFC championship. And they haven't done that. Have they done that once before, maybe? Or have they ever done it made it to the NFC championship before?
I don't remember what the stat was whenever that came out.
I don't think that they.
I don't think they've ever made it that far.
Yeah, that's farthest the Lions have ever made it in the playoffs before. Like, that's crazy. And I mean, out of all these three coaches, they made it the farthest in the playoffs. Their first playoff win in 30-something years, and they went and did one more after that and made it, far enough. Obviously, like I said, I wish they could have gone one at all, but they didn't. And honestly, just watching the fucking the clips of him in the fucking locker room and stuff, he is like a fucking I was getting fired up, wanted to be a fucking Lions fan just because of how Dan Campbell was talking to his players. He is like a fucking players coach. He's hard. He's gritty. He doesn't seem conventional. He's not gonna he doesn't follow I mean, it fucked him sometime, but he doesn't follow just the basic boring coach shit some coaches do. He's interesting. He's fun to watch.
He's consistent. I'll give him that. If he's gonna be ballsy, he's gonna be ballsy. If he's gonna, he is a leader of men. So, and yeah. I agree. I've watched a lot of his post-game speeches, and they are awesome. I feel like if you're
into battle, I would do it. I would run behind him with a spear and follow him into battle if I had to. He's awesome. I think
he is a hell of a head coach. Just like you guys are talking, just a pure motivator of his guys across the board. I don't think there's a player that's ever came off of one of his teams that said they wouldn't run through a brick wall for him still. But I think that he's just the ability to go and get to 30, break that 30-year drought and then take them to the NFC Championship, like Ryan said, is I am shocked that Ryan was the only guy that picked him. I'm obviously I picked D'Amico Ryans, but I am shocked that nobody else did swing over to Dan Campbell there.
I mean, the stats that would have been on his slide were just that, it's his third year as the Lions head coach. They had a 12-5 record this year. That obviously they made the playoffs. They made it to the NFC Championship game. and they won the NFC North. So, I mean, I didn't pick him obviously, but all three of these guys were they were my top three. So
Yeah, Dan Campbell would have been 2 for me, right behind D'Amico Ryans. But yeah, I think it's still a good pick. I think all three of these guys are really good picks. So um, let's move on to the next one. Hopefully, I don't have any more missing slides. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. But we got D'Amico Ryans next. And we do have the stats on here. First year Texans coach. He went 10-7 this season, won the AFC South, especially, managed to win it in the final week against the Colts, and then made the playoffs and made it all the way to the AFC divisional round, which is, pretty good considering the Texans were the number 2 pick last year. So quite a drastic change, and they made a lot of good moves in the draft. They went and got C.J. Stroud, which obviously worked out well, and then moved all the way up to get the 3rd pick to get Will Anderson Jr. And so they built a good squad this year. I picked them. So did Gavin, Matthew, and Tyler. So I'll let y'all go. Say anything y'all want to say about them.
I really just think it's the fact of rookie head coach, like you said, number 2 pick last year. They completely turned the season around. It was like night and day from what we saw last season. And I will say, I doubted them coming into the season. One of my bold predictions was that they were still going to go below 500. Blew that out of the water. The whole team looks great, and they're going to be a scary team for the next however many years to come.
I'm happy to hear about that, Steven.
Hey, it is what it is. I do look.
That's just how it happens.
No, I like D'Amico Ryans a lot. I think he deserved to be a head coach, and it made sense for him to go to the Texans. He played there before, so obviously he wanted to go there. He had his choices last season, and he chose the Texans, and it has worked out. And no one could have foreseen. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about C.J. Stroud. No one could have foreseen exactly, how that would go, and I'm sure he's a heavy part of that. If he didn't, maybe C.J. Stroud wouldn't have worked out if he went somewhere else with a different head coach or whatever. Obviously, they've got a great squad. So I respect it. Obviously, they're in my division. They're a rival, but I respect the Texans this year.
I think just what Matthew said right there in the middle of his explaining of his pick, the doubt that was there before the season with this. I absolutely hated this move for D'Amico Ryans last offseason. I think I even mentioned it on the podcast that I didn't trust the Houston Texans front office to be able to give him the support that he needed to be able to be a great head coach. Like I knew that he could be. I felt like the Texans organization as a whole, the culture, the players were not going to be able to be there and follow the way that he was going to lead. I thought he was going to get screwed out of jobs in the future because of taking this job. He completely blew it out of the water whenever it came to having success. His culture that he implemented there in the building, the front office backing him, and him being able to turn it around from the number 2 overall pick to a divisional round matchup against the Ravens that they could have won and made it to the AFC Championship. Like Matthew said, this is going to be a force for years to come in the AFC South. I absolutely hate it for the 2 Titans fans out here, especially to the fact it looks like they're on the long end of the start of a rebuild right now. Hate that you have two buzzsaws in the division already with the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans, and now Colts are looking like they're building up. It's about to be a tough division for you guys, especially if D'Amico Ryans stays around for as long as I think he's going to, with how much success he's going to continue to have.
At least y'all's division won't be like as bad as it was in the past anymore.
Yeah,
because y'all were one of the worst
won't be the
divisions
last
in the past year. So
Yeah. The NFC now the NFC South was kind of like Mississippi was to Alabama. They just kind of bailed us out for a while, but not so much anymore for either side, I guess. But I will say another honorable mention that I did consider, and I've said this earlier on in the season that I felt like depending on who won between the Colts and the Texans in that final game would get Coach of the Year. Shane Steichen did a really good job too, really fixing that Colts team, especially when they lost their quarterback they drafted, and he made it work with Gardner Minshew, and which Gardner Minshew's a good quarterback anyway, but I think Shane Steichen is an honorable mention for Coach of the Year, in my opinion. Let's move on to the next one. Jason's pick. I do have this slide, luckily. Kevin Stefanski, the Browns head coach, just to read what we got on here. 4th-year Browns head coach, 11-6 this season. Got second in the AFC North, but because the Ravens, of course, were unstoppable. Got the 5 seed. Made the playoffs and dealt with injuries and multiple quarterbacks this year. So go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean the biggest part I feel like is one, the record 11-6, really good record, and the bottom point, all of the injuries that they had and how many quarterbacks that they went through this season, and to still make the playoffs. Yes, they lost horribly in the wild card, but to still make the playoffs with everything that happened, I find incredibly impressive, because I pulled up a list just to see what players all got injured and were out for the season, because I forgot, because there were so many. They had like Jacob Phillips go down, Jack Conklin, obviously Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson.
DTR and
I mean,
every one of our quarterbacks.
in total on this list, at least, they had 9 players that were starters get injured and be out for the rest of the season at some point. And the list goes on players that were out for an extended amount of time as well. I just thought it was impressive that they were only like, well, I guess they were 3 games back of winning their division, because I think the Ravens went 14-3. But yeah, I was impressed that they were able to, have a good season like this with everything that they had to battle through. And I thought that they lost their punter at some point and had to get a new one, but I don't see him on this list, so maybe I'm thinking of a different team.
And see, that's what I thought too, because when you sent it to me, we were talking about it. I thought they went through several punters too, but I couldn't find anything to prove that, so I don't know. Maybe it's a...
Yeah, I don't see a punter on this list, so I think we maybe we had the same dream or something, and yeah.
But regardless, yeah, for the Browns to do what they did with all the problems they had was very impressive. So I think it's a good pick too. All right, y'all got anything else to add on that? No? Okay, let's move on. Now we're going to do the comeback player of the year. One of these things is not like the other on this list. You got, I picked Baker Mayfield. We had 2 people, being Ryan and Tyler, picking Joe Flacco. Gavin picked Damar Hamlin. Matthew picked Tua Tagovailoa, and then Jason picked Breece Hall. So I gotta hope I have these slides. We'll get to all of these in a minute, but we'll start with Baker Mayfield. I'm not going to necessarily read all the stats. If you're watching the video, you'll see them, because there's plenty of them. But my reason for picking Baker Mayfield was the fact that, the final thing on this list, this is the first year on one team since 2021. He's been through just several teams, several different situations. We weren't really sure how it would work out on the Bucks. I didn't think it would be very good, but I was very surprised with how well he played. Obviously, give the dude a reliable wide receiver like Mike Evans, and Baker Mayfield balled out. So mostly the comeback is just finally being able to just be the quarterback of a team and just stay there and play well, making it into the playoffs and winning a playoff game. So that's why I picked Baker Mayfield.
Whenever I was thinking of who to pick for this one, I didn't even consider Baker Mayfield, but I like the pick a lot.
I heavily considered Baker Mayfield. Obviously, I am a huge fan of him and his game. I like his moxie as a player. And if the guy I picked didn't exist, I would have picked him to be the comeback player of the year, because he has one of the best stories whenever it comes to a player that fully went through the season, was gaining stats, and was actually, truly dominating. If Damar Hamlin did not, exist right now, I would 1000% be on the train. I don't think there would have been another option in my eyes. Baker Mayfield would have won it.
I'm so excited when we get to your slide.
Oh yeah, we'll get there in a minute.
I am. I am too.
Let's move on.
Can't wait to see those stats of the season he had.
Oh yeah, DeMar Hamlin has some great stats. So let's move on. We got Joe Flacco next. One of the people who picked him isn't here, of course, Tyler, but we do have Ryan here. And of course, once again, the biggest thing is, and this is what I assumed was your reasoning, Ryan, was he came out of retirement and balled out of his mind for the Browns, but maybe you got more to it. Let's hear it.
That's no reason. Yeah. I mean, it's fucking. He just he was sat on his couch at the end of the season, and then all of a sudden it was like, "Oh, Browns, you need to go to the playoffs? Sure, let me come out." And just got off fucking got up out there, fucking balled out. Yeah, he threw like he literally didn't give a shit about that football. He was just tossing that shit wherever the fuck he wanted, but it fucking worked up until the playoffs. So it got him
Up until it didn't.
It fucking worked over those few games. He was
Joe Flacco looks like all of us in Madden when we throw the ball.
Obviously, the coach did great and everything, but everybody wrote the Browns off. I feel once they at this point they had no QB really. That was good. It was nothing. And they brought in Joe Flacco, and all of a sudden he made the Browns relevant again and brought the playoffs. So I mean, I think that's about as good of a comeback player of the year as you can be.
I think Joe's good.
No, I was just gonna say I considered him a lot for my comeback player of the year. It was just the interceptions. I couldn't justify it.
See, even with all the interceptions he threw, he still got a 90.2 pass rating. So that's fucking really good for a lot of interceptions as well.
No, I think
he had like the same amount.
He has great stats. Look at these stats on here, and he only played in 5 games. Mm-hmm. It's pretty good for only 5 games. But then, I feel the same way about Joe Flacco that I do about Dane Campbell and why I didn't pick either of them for these awards. Dane Campbell, he was ballsy, went for it on 4th down a lot and all this stuff. It worked until it didn't. Joe Flacco, he throws the ball. He didn't give a fuck if it's a touchdown or interception. It worked until it didn't. Mostly in the Ravens or the Texans game. So
I watch football for entertainment purposes, not for reliability. So that's why I pick with my heart, Steven.
Gotcha.
So
hey, respect. Joe Flacco is a great pick. I can totally see him winning it. I really do.
That's a great quote right there. I watch football for entertainment, not reliability. Great fucking quote right there.
Maybe that'll be the thumbnail. I'll just put a picture of you in that quote.
Not whatever. It doesn't get clicks if it's us. So.
Yeah, I know. We won't be on. DeMar Hamlin's going to be on our thumbnail probably.
Make it Joe Flacco, DeMar Hamlin fist fighting.
That's an idea. All right. Well, speaking of DeMar Hamlin, let's move on.
Oh God, here we go.
Gavin's pick. We are going to take a moment to read the stats on this one. So Gavin picked DeMar Hamlin. So in this year. Obviously he came back to life and played some football, and that's why he probably will win it. So he only played in 5 games. He had 2 solo tackles, 2 rushing yards, 17 snaps played, 1 penalty, which was declined, by the way. That's his stats. So let's hear it, Gavin.
You didn't even mention the fake punt.
I'm just going to say...
That's the 2 rushing yards.
Oh, sorry. I didn't even do that.
So, here's the thing. I absolutely hate this award in general. The Comeback Player of the Year award does not fully make sense to me. Some years, yes, it makes sense. And there's one guy that came back from a horrific injury. I believe it was Alex Smith one year had it and was locked into the award because he had came back from Joe Theismann's leg injury and had a good year the next year. Outside of that, there's not a guy, Geno Smith, but what did he come back from? Just being benched?
Mediocrity.
What? So that's
but that's the point. Yeah. That's the point that he's trying to make is that it's really just like I don't even know what you would call this award. It's not comeback player.
Comeback player of the year.
It's subjective. That's all it is.
It's a weirdly subjective. It's a weirdly subjective award. And if you want to talk about somebody that came back from something, that last sentence on the awards is the only thing that really matters. He came back from the dead and then managed to play football in the NFL next year. Now,
Don't care.
was there a shot the Bills would have cut him? Was there a single shot in hell that the Bills would have cut him? No. He could have came out literally been out of
Not done
shape,
anything.
overweight, been 300 pounds
In
at
a
the safety
wheelchair.
position, and he still would have been on that roster. But
Yeah.
he came back and actually went into a NFL game after dying on the football field in front of everybody in prime time. I remember whenever I was in the gym and the game got shut down, I was sitting up there looking, I was like, how bad was this injury? And then I found out there was a man that literally died on the field. If you're going to come back from anything and win an award, I would say coming back from the dead is pretty amazing to be able to win this award. Despite, I said from the beginning of the season, if he got a single tackle, he was going to win this award, and he got 2 of them. So I
Give it
I
to
would
him
say
twice,
that's
honestly.
that's my call.
He
Give it to
doubled
him
your
twice.
expectations.
I mean, let's
Yeah.
do it.
Kevin,
It's the middle.
your argument is all fine and everything. Yeah, he came back from the dead, but he didn't do shit. Don't give him the award. It just bothers the hell out of me. He
I think
doesn't
even if you had, like,
deserve it.
If you had an average to below average season of a safety, then that would have made sense. Even if he,
Something.
yeah, like if he had gotten like in the middle of the pack safety stats, give him the award. The fact he played
Yes.
for 17 downs the entire year.
And the
He
fact he
averaged-
also. Go ahead, Jason.
I would say he averaged 1 snap played per regular season game.
So I
He was
think
a
if
practice squad player before he died. That's the thing.
yeah, exactly.
Before he got
exactly.
injured in that game, he was a practice squad player. He got brought up to the active roster for that game and then had that freak accident that killed him.
Yeah.
And then
If not for that, nobody would have known his name.
Exactly.
But
I
he
think
did die on the
that
football field, and it was the biggest story of last season, and it ended up being that he played this year.
Oh,
He came back from it.
I think if he got the punt return or punt for first down,
Player of the year.
Give
Yeah,
it
no,
to him.
I think
Give it to
absolutely,
him.
yeah.
I think
If
if
he
he
had
had
one thing.
he had one big play and he sucked. He did not get it.
I think if he had gotten that, or he should have played. I wish he could have played in the Bengals-Bills game this year, because that would have been a big
Much of a
storyline.
risk.
They showed him 1,000 times in that game, but he was not even in uniform and stuff because he was an active player. If he had played in that game, I would have considered it more at that point. But the thing is, he might still win it. Just because of the storyline here. But how much money are you going to make if he is comeback player of the year, Gavin?
Oh, the odds were so low. I would off the $25 bet I placed, I'm going to make $7. Like it is
Okay.
not even a big money bet.
He's gonna
I'm
win
just
it, right?
legitimately. That's the thing. He's just gonna win it. It's just
No,
going
he's-
to be him. That's why I think this
he's
award
losing
needs to
you
either
money,
be
Gavin.
renamed. I think the award needs to be renamed to Most Improved Player of the Year, and then have something about an injury award if you want to have it to where there's one for somebody that comes back from injury. But this award is so subjective, it doesn't make sense. Every one of the guys that you guys picked, Baker Mayfield, he came back from mediocrity and having coaches that doubted him. Yeah. Joe Flacco came back from retirement. Yeah.
Pretty much.
I forget Brees Hall. He came back from an
Injury.
ACL.
We
injury.
haven't gotten to him yet. Yeah.
We haven't gotten to him yet. Tua came back from 15 concussions in a 3-week period, I think. But none of them came back from the fucking dead. So I would say that that's probably the biggest thing here.
the last thing I
Um,
want to say about the this like general award, I'm gonna obviously talk about my pick, but the award in general, if he wins this award, it loses any and all credibility it ever had because of how low his stats are compared to these other guys.
Again, I don't think it ever really was very credible. It's like we said, it's very
That's why I said
subjective.
any and all credibility it ever had is gone.
Like, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't think in anybody's Hall of Fame stats you've ever seen comeback player of the year getting mentioned as like they won this. Like I think Tom Brady, I think he got injured for a full season, right? I think he might have been in the running for it the next year. Does anybody ever talk about that and winning this
No.
award? Like it doesn't matter. This award is like the biggest who cares award. It's there to be for a mid-level player that had a decent season after suffering something bad.
To be fair, you're
It's
also talking
basically
about
what it's
you're
there
talking
for.
about Tom Brady, who has way better awards in general. So like, not
Exactly,
all
yeah. It's the
players are going to
greatest.
have something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, some of these
yeah,
people,
but then
some of these people, it could be the only award that they do win in their career. So it needs to have some credibility to it.
Anyway, let's move on. I'm tired of talking about DeMar Hamlin. Let's move on to the next one. Matthew picked Tua Tagovailoa, and this one kind of surprised me. I did not expect to see Tua on here, but it does make sense. He came back from, like Gavin mentioned, he had like 30 different concussions last year. Managed to play the entire season this year,
Yeah.
so it makes
So
sense.
I mean, he was throwing up gang signs on the field last season when he was laying there concussed. And I'm sorry.
Mm.
But
Go ahead, move on. Go, move on. Keep going.
regardless, he made it through the entire season, was like the top quarterback in every stat this season. So I think he deserves it. He made it through the entire season. He actually did stuff. So
God.
This is such a dumb award to talk about.
All right,
I hate
let's
this award
let's
so
move on to
much.
Brees Hall.
I mean,
This award so
look,
much.
Tua could win it, and that'd be fine. You know, obviously the jiu-jitsu or whatever he did in the offseason helped because he didn't get injured. Yeah.
It worked a ton. You saw him doing the flips on the field. He actually would do the flip, and I believe there was a part of him he had to train himself to not do the ninja move every time he would do the roll after he got hit. But I mean, he had a great year, hell of a year. Came back from, like Matthew said, against the Bengals. Oddly enough, throwing up the having the brain injury that was so massive, he was throwing up literally hand motions like this because his brain was so traumatized.
Oh God.
Heck of a year. Just
Got
I mean, he
got
came back
last
from
in
a
the
traumatic.
got last in the Pro Bowl accuracy competition.
Why'd you
Oh yeah,
bring up the Pro Bowl?
hey, that's an important stat. Hey, he did not do good in the Pro Bowl accuracy. That's about as important as
Yep.
comeback player of the year
Hey.
award is in general.
Yep. Mhm.
you know what though? Lamar Hamlin didn't make the Pro Bowl, so
But
Oh
how many
my
ambulances does
God.
Tua have named after him?
That's true.
Exactly.
All right.
Can we go on?
Let's
I want to
move
get to
on.
real awards.
All right, last one on the comeback player of the year.
Please.
All right, next we got Brees Hall, which I thought was a pretty good pick too, because he came back
did too.
from the really bad injury that basically cost him the offensive rookie of the year last year. And I mean, look at this. We're gonna get to him in a bit. We're gonna see some Christian McCaffrey on here, of course. That should be no surprise to anyone. He has very similar stats as far as like rushing and receiving touchdowns go. Well, not the rushing touchdowns, the receiving touchdowns and the receiving yards is pretty similar. So Brees Hall had a hell of a good year, despite everything, especially with the Jets, how much they struggled this year. But Jason, let's hear your piece on it.
Yeah, I mean he was the one bright spot on the Jets team this season, besides the 3 snaps that Aaron Rodgers played where he didn't even throw the ball. And I mean, 4.5 yards a carry is really good. He was 6 yards off of a 1,000-yard season off of an ACL tear. And I mean, like you have on here, he balled out. I really like watching him play, and I wish he was on a better team than the Jets. Brees Hall, if you're watching this video, come play for the Broncos. For
Don't do that.
for a salary of $100 per year, because we don't have any money.
Oh.
I just remember how excited I was when we were at the Titans Seahawks game, and on the jumbotron they came up and were like, "Hope some of you guys have Brees Hall on your fantasy team," and he was on my starting lineup that week, and I'm like, "What?" And that was the week he had like 43.1 fantasy points, and I'm like, "Yes!" So I remember that. So obviously, a lot of it too, especially he did incredible in PPR leagues this year. I think he was like top 5, I think, in for running backs because he got so many receptions too. Because a lot of the quarterbacks that he had this season just didn't feel comfortable throwing the ball very far down the field. So just a quick screen to Brees Hall. There's a free point right there.
Yep.
But you got anything else to add on this one?
No.
All right. Let's move on to other awards. Let's look at Defensive Rookie of the Year. And you got Will Anderson Jr. here. You got Devon Witherspoon and Jalen Carter. Let's start off with Will Anderson Jr. Matthew, you're the only one here who picked him. Let's hear why you picked Will Anderson Jr.
Really, none of the defensive rookies had a super stellar season. And I am just more of a fan of Will Anderson Jr. I see Brian making a face like somebody had an insane season, but nobody did. So,
I mean, Devon Witherspoon had an amazing season. What are you fucking talking about?
Devon Witherspoon
Well,
did
I
have a
mean-
really good season. We'll look at that stats in a minute, but
I don't know. None of the defensive rookies really impressed me. So, and I like Will Anderson Jr. the most out of all of them. That's really the only reason I picked him.
We all knew already that you and Tyler picked him because of the Alabama bias. His stats do not back up winning Defensive Rookie of the Year.
I mean,
He didn't
yeah.
really start to show up until the second half of the season. It was legitimately a tough first start to the year. He didn't really catch his wind until the back half, which is I think where he got like 6 of his 7 sacks.
I did not expect to see Will Anderson Jr. on here. I still think he was a solid player. I just didn't think he did enough to earn this award. Which obviously I'm on the Devon Witherspoon train too. So, let's move on to the next one. Let's look at Devon Witherspoon. Look at this. Like comparing these stats. Obviously, Will Anderson Jr. had more sacks, but also Devon Witherspoon's a corner. But
He only had more tackles. He only had more tackles because the Seahawks have a dog shit rush defense, so everybody gets to the second level, and he made the tackles.
Still, he's a corner getting solo tackles.
But I'm saying it's because everybody makes it to the second level.
That doesn't matter. It's still he's an individual team. He's not letting them make it to the second level. He's stopping them at the second level.
Why of all stats did we not put his interceptions on the
I was also
list?
curious why we didn't do that either, but
I thought he only had the one interception.
he might have only had one interception.
It was
the one interception for the pick six, so that's why we put it as a pick because it's a 97-yard pick six. That alone was pretty much what made me want to pick Devon Witherspoon. So yeah, you got Ryan, me, and Jason all picking Devon Witherspoon, and I mean, it just seems crazy because like last year, Tariq Woolen was definitely in the running there. He didn't do as much this year, but Devon Witherspoon was the lead corner for the Seahawks for this year. So,
yeah, I mean, and he missed, I think, 4 games this year. Like those stats are missing 4 games, and just talking about once again tackles alone, he got more solo tackles than either of these other 2 players combined as a corner. And I know maybe it's because our front sucks, but it doesn't matter. He did great.
I'm just saying, compared to last year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, the seasons were not even close to what Sauce Gardner had last season. I'm not taking anything away from Devon Witherspoon. I'm just saying this year's defensive rookies were not as good as last year at all.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say that whenever I talked about Jalen Carter. I completely agree with that statement.
But we're not comparing last year to this year. We're comparing this year to this year.
I think
Hey, Jason, suck my dick.
Over.
Yeah.
I didn't imagine things getting so heated on this part of the podcast.
On D-Roy?
Yeah, I thought it was going to all be on the comeback player of the year.
I made a statement that was just accurate, and then they want to jump on me because Ryan has Seahawks bias.
It's not just Seahawks bias. I mean, it's accurate, but like I'm not by myself here. If you compare the stats, he is easily the defensive rookie of the year. He missed fucking 4 games with those stats. That's a fucking
the best ability is availability. And also, you're comparing solo tackles to defensive linemen. That's not.
Yeah, that is
the
problem too. Is that 2 different positions do affect that? I just again looking at they're still going to have to compare the multiple positions for this award.
But that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying just because of tackles I'm picking. I'm saying he's on in all of these categories. Like, he got a fucking giant pick six. He had 16 pass defense. He had the tackles. He has a forced fumble. He has 3 sacks as a corner. Like, there was obviously I watched all the Seahawks games. He was the highlight of our fucking defense this year, pretty much by himself, and he's a rookie. So,
all right. Well, let's move on to the last one. Gavin picked Jalen Carter by himself. I think a couple of us picked Jalen Carter at midseason, and I was one of them. Ended up switching to Von Witherspoon for the final bit. But so, Gavin, what was your reasoning for Jalen Carter?
It was a mix of, like Matthew said, none of the defensive rookies truly stood out, because even like Devon Witherspoon, his stats as solo tackles is amazing. That is something that does need to be commended as a cornerback, being able to get 56. Yes, how much of that is situational whenever it comes to run defense being led up to that second level. But then there was like 2 other rookie corners, Joey Porter Jr. being one of them, that I feel like had decent stats whenever you compare them. I think he had 3 picks or 4 picks, Joey Porter Jr. did. And that's another reason why he was a finalist. But just looking as Jalen Carter from a completely outside, non-biased perspective, defensive tackle being able to get 6 sacks on the year in the NFL, that's always good. That's what around that number that you truly want an average for your defensive tackle to be able to get. If he gets a threshold over 5 sacks, that means you have a good pass rushing defensive tackle. But then let's also add in the fact, he's having to sub in because he's a part of a rotation of 3 defensive tackles. So that means half of his stats are coming in whenever he's not even playing the full amount of the game. 20 solo tackles, 13 assisted tackles. Whenever you're on the interior of the defensive line, you're not there to be able to get a lot of solo tackles. In fact, most of the time, D linemen are going to get those assisted tackles because they're going to be going into a gang situation. They're going to be pushing guys back. The amount of times I saw Jalen Carter just absolutely dominate the guy in front of him was insane. It was unreal. The disruption he got was why I gave him this award, almost solely based off that. 2 forced fumbles, 1 fumble recovery that he picked up after he forced it. Yeah, those are big time stats, but the disruption from the interior D line that he was able to cause, he's going to be a great player for years to come. And I mean, I think it's the same thing with a lot of these awards this year. There's not somebody that's really standing out at most of them. So I just kind of gave it to Jalen Carter based off of the fact that I feel like his disruption alone was what gave him that drive.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. Offensive Rookie of the Year. Only two people on this one. You got Puka Nacua, which Ryan and Matthew picked, and then everyone else picked CJ Stroud. So let's start with Puka Nacua.
He broke the rookie record. That's all that should have to be said. He's the new rookie receiving leader. I mean, that's just it.
Yeah,
he broke the rookie record. He's the best rookie.
It's that, and also there's the fact. I mean, it's the whole thing of CJ Stroud was obviously one of the better rookie quarterbacks we've seen in a while. But that's just the whole thing about with the MVP and all the other votings. They put quarterbacks, they weigh them so much more than everybody else. It's like, yeah, he's been a great quarterback, but comparative to other quarterbacks, Puka Nacua was like one of the top 3 best receivers in the league almost at some points during the season. Whereas CJ Stroud was great, but he wasn't he was top 10 quarterback this year. Yeah, I don't know if he was in the top.
I don't know what his actual stats were, but
yeah,
didn't compared to. I mean, Puka had almost 1,500 receiving yards this season. That's ridiculous for somebody who's in their 5th year. I mean,
and we have to respect the fact that he was picked in the 5th round or something like that.
It's the number 2 overall pick versus a 5th round pick, so it's I just think it's the quarterback weight of it is too much in these offensive awards. They shouldn't be giving them that much weight just because they're quarterbacks.
Now, if Puka got 10 touchdowns this season, there's no contest whatsoever. But I think that's kind of what's weighing him down.
That's what weighed him down for me. Was he only had
me
6
too.
touchdowns.
His yards is insane, but it didn't seem like the ball went his way as much in the end zone, and that's what hurt him.
I think a lot of it was that when they got down into the red zone, Kyron Williams was getting a lot of touches.
Oh yeah.
So it was between him and then obviously the couple that Puka Nacua got, but
And
still.
receivers are different. I mean, not every receiver is a red zone receiver, and so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean he's not a good receiver. He's just not a red zone receiver that much.
Well, I mean,
I think
because
he deserves it, but I see the argument for CJ Stroud 100%.
I was about to say, I think all four of us that didn't pick Puka Nacua, he was probably our second pick, if not, he was our third.
He was my number 2. It was between those two for me.
I mean, yeah, I mean,
so.
CJ Stroud was my number 2
Yeah.
as well. I'm just saying, I think Puka was more outstanding at his position than CJ was.
I'm about to say, I don't think there's any of us that would say that he's at the third. I mean, I guess I don't speak for Tyler, but clearly these are the two that would have an argument for Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. I would put in a caveat if Devon Chan was able to stay healthy. I think if he kept on that monstrous run that he was on the beginning of the season, he has an argument to possibly say he would have been able to make it, but we don't know. If ifs and whats were fifths and shots, we'd all be drunk. I can't sit here and say that Devon Chan would be that guy. These two did it throughout the season.
I might be alone in this, but my number 3, it's not the sexiest pick probably, but for me, I would have said my number 3 would have been like Sam Laporta. Even though, I mean, he's a tight end, but he had a ton of touchdowns. At least I don't have the stats to prove that, but it just seemed like he got quite a few touchdowns. Somebody look it up.
He got quite a few.
Yeah, y'all are gonna look it up, and it's gonna be like 4, and I'm gonna look like an idiot. But
I'll throw my third pick. I'll throw it out there was Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers is a good one too.
That's a good pick. Yeah, Sam Laporta had 10 touchdowns.
I think.
Okay, good.
I think in any other year, Sam Laporta is going to be in the discussion for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Funnily enough, I just talked about how this year was a down year for awards. Offensive Rookie of the Year was one of the hottest races whenever it comes to the top 3 picks. And that was like one of the hardest ones to pick. It was one of the hardest ones to pick.
We had some great rookies on offense this year. Just incredible. Right out the gate. All right, let's move on to the other one. CJ Stroud. There's CJ Stroud's stats. We already sort of talked about him, obviously, but again, it's just a thing of just, a big part of what made the Texans were supposed to be rebuilding, and the fact that they just won their division right after getting the second overall pick, which of course got them CJ Stroud. Quite a change, and that's kind of why I picked him. And then again, for me, Puka, it was just the fact of, and it's true what Ryan said, Puka Nacua does a lot more of the bigger plays. If they get in the red zone, they'll probably go to Kyron Williams or even Cooper Kupp in the slot or something. So that probably hurt him from just a stat standpoint. There's a lot more to the story there, but that's kind of what just led me to pick CJ Stroud. Of course, he's in my division, so I watched a lot of CJ Stroud this year. I saw him a ton, and it was just incredible to watch what he was doing there at the Texans.
The biggest thing for me to pick CJ Stroud was the fact that he came into the league and immediately became the leader of his team and put them in the playoffs and won them a playoff game. That was enough to give him the award in my mind, obviously. And he has the stats to back it up.
Oh yeah. What I was going to say, let's be honest.
It was the touchdown to interception ratio is one that you got to focus on as well.
He had
I'm sorry.
20. It was a 23-5 ratio.
That's crazy.
I just stepped all over Matthew on that last statement. Sorry about that, brother.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine.
But it's crazy because it was several games before he even got that first interception too.
Oh yeah, he is the best rookie quarterback we've seen since Joe Burrow maybe.
No, Joe Burrow got hurt his rookie year.
That's right, he did.
I think it would be Justin Herbert would be like the only comparison you would be able to have a chance to make, because I think he stayed healthy his full rookie season and had a good wide receiver core. But the thing is, we expected Herbert to be able to have a little success because he had Mike Williams, he had Keenan Allen, he had, if I'm not mistaken, Hunter Henry still at the time, Austin Eckler in the backfield. Nobody expected CJ Stroud to go in there. We all thought Nico Collins, he's 2, maybe 3 wide receiver on another team. Tank Dell's a rookie. I forget their third option for wide receiver. Oh, I'm sorry, John Mechie. I'm losing my Alabama bias there. Dalton Schultz is a tight end. Everybody was thinking that. Bobby Trees. They got Bobby Trees on the roster. Everyone was like, "This is a mid-level. This is mid-level roster. He shouldn't have success, but he went out there and did. It was amazing to watch.
Dalton Schultz is a huge key in CJ Stroud's success this season.
Specifically because all of his receivers got hurt.
Pretty
I
much,
feel
yeah.
like.
Oh yeah.
I think it is funny how the contrast of how we were all on each other's throats for Defensive Rookie of the Year, and now we're all like agreeing with each other for Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Don't worry, I'm sure we'll argue again in a couple slides.
Yeah,
Probably.
easily. All right, let's move
It's
on.
gonna happen.
Now for Offensive Player of the Year. We had four candidates here.
Steven, you idiot.
What?
Nothing. I was just going to go back to each other's throats. We picked the same person.
Okay. I was like, to be fair, my brain immediately went to I fucked something up on the slide, to be fair. So, all right. So we got. Go ahead.
This slide right here, I don't think anybody would disagree one way. I think all these guys could win Offensive Player of the Year.
These are all great picks. So you got, of course, you got Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb as our Offensive Players of the Year. So we'll start off with the guy who isn't here, I guess. We got Lamar Jackson first. And this won't be the only time we see him. Spoiler alert.
I have a Defensive Player of the Year.
Somebody needs to do a Tyler impersonation and say why this was his pick.
Okay, I got it. I really like the jerseys.
No, he's probably going to say something along the lines of he probably didn't want to pick him for MVP unless he did double down. I actually haven't seen his answers on that.
No one doubled down.
He probably didn't want to pick him for him. All right, nobody doubled down. That's good. He probably didn't want to pick him for MVP. He knew he had a heck of a season. I mean, he was a great offensive player. I had a hard time because, spoiler alert for my picks later, I didn't pick him for MVP either. It was just his stats for me were just a little too loud. But for Offensive Player of the Year, almost 1,000 yards as a quarterback whenever it comes to rushing yards, almost 4,000 yards passing, touchdown-wise, he was just a machine whenever it came to the season. The team that he put around him was just absolutely outstanding. Their record was great, number one in the AFC. I mean, he is a good candidate for Offensive Player of the Year, but I think he was a better candidate whenever it comes to trying to argue for MVP. But if you're not going to put him at MVP, most people would put him down here, and I think that's what happened with Tyler here.
Yeah,
I think so too.
Two players got switched between MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. You can probably guess who they are, obviously. But I still like Lamar Jackson at Offensive Player of the Year, especially with who Tyler picked at MVP when we get there. But let's move on to Christian McCaffrey. What an absolute amazing year for Christian McCaffrey. Just his stats are incredible. And, I mean, if the 49ers are going to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be him probably getting at least 2 touchdowns in it, probably. Because we know the Chiefs' rushing defense isn't that great, which is why I didn't understand the Ravens not running the ball at all in that game. But we'll talk about that more later. But Christian McCaffrey, looking at his stats, just an incredible year. And, of course, I picked him for Offensive Player of the Year, and so did Ryan.
I mean, I didn't pick him, but I was just going to say, over 2,000 all-purpose yards and 21 touchdowns is incredible. And you have to remember, he did have that game where he didn't have a touchdown. So he got 21 touchdowns in a 16-game span, really, which is crazy.
I also want to point out what speaks real volumes about this him as a player and how deserving he is of either Offensive Player of the Year or MVP. Notice who picked him for Offensive Player of the Year here. Yes, Steven, going to respect game. Ryan is in his division and absolutely hates the 49ers and picked him for Offensive Player of the Year. That just speaks volumes of how good of a season that he had.
He loves Christian McCaffrey, though.
Oh, never mind.
He does. Don't lie.
Matthew, you had to fucking out me. Yeah, I mean, I like this Chris McCaffrey a lot when he was on the Panthers, and then he went to 49ers, and I was really fucking sad. I still like him. He's my favorite. I mean, him or Kittle I like the most. Those are the only 2 players I like on the 49ers, to be honest. I don't like any of the other players, really, at all.
You were just talking about before the podcast. You love Nick Bosa, like he's your absolute favorite player in the league.
He's my least favorite player in the entire league. We did bottom 10. Nick Bosa's number 1.
Comments, don't let him hide. He's lying to you. He's lying to you. He's his favorite player. He's got 3 jerseys.
It's Nick Bosa that is Mr. Irrelevant, like few fucking places after him. Fucking Brock Purdy ass motherfucker.
I like to think that Ryan has 3 different or 3 different Nick Bosa jerseys, all different, like they're alternate, and then they're home and away. The way Ryan, they're the way
Yes,
that
he
Gavin
does. He does.
Absolutely not.
He goes into
He
his
wears them
closet,
everywhere.
goes into the closet in the morning to give him little kisses on the on the on the text, just to say, "Love you, Bosa. Have a good day."
God, no. Yeah, no. I mean, C-Mac was phenomenal. I mean, this is also one of the few years where he's remained mostly healthy the entire year. So I think he more than most years deserves it because he actually was able to ball out this year long term because he has had injury issues in the past.
Give him comeback player of the year.
There we go.
Real talk, thumbnail idea. I know us putting ourselves on the thumbnails don't work, but I'd be tempted to make one of Ryan like praising Bosa behind the
fuck that.
podium.
No.
For defensive player of the year. We
God,
can do that.
Yes.
No.
I wouldn't do that to you, Ryan.
About to say, I'm about to.
I would. Let me do it.
If you do that, Titans go in my least favorite team this year.
Okay, I won't do it. I don't want the Titans to get demoted, 2 spots.
Yes.
So
I'll skew those stats because we're still doing the podcast favorite teams, and I'll make those stats skewed against the Titans.
Yeah.
If I have to.
All right. Let's move on to the next one. We got Tyreek Hill as Offensive Player of the Year, and this dude was in running for MVP for a while too. And shout out to Gavin's bold prediction. Gavin said that I think you said either Tyreek Hill or just said a receiver for the Dolphins. I don't remember. Was going to get 17. You did say Tyreek Hill. 1,700 yards was your prediction. He had 1,799. Crazy good prediction.
I am mad at myself for not saying that he was going to get the 2,000 because I have a feeling that's the reason he stopped at 1,799. That and also getting kind of clamped in the past couple games.
Didn't help.
Injury stopped him. Injury stopped him.
Yeah. No, it didn't help that the Titans hurt him. No, it was 1,700. I'm pretty sure it's 1,700.
Oh no, I wish he would have picked 1,800 and he would have got it
right. That would have been
hilarious. Been off by 1 yard. But yeah, just looking at that,
clearly just a stud wide receiver. In my opinion, the best wide receiver in the league and a top 10 wide receiver in the history of the NFL. And there is a lot of bias there, obviously being, I guess, a closeted Chiefs fan now, and also being a Dolphins fan my whole life. I would have picked him I think at the midseason awards. If I wasn't predicting who I thought was going to win, I would have picked him for MVP. He was hands down one of the best players in the NFL this year. He hard carried the Dolphins offense at certain times. Whenever we were having some struggles, it was always just find the ball in Tyreek's hands and we're going to be able to get ourselves out of any rut. Doesn't matter if the run game's not working. Doesn't matter if the pass game's not truly working. Draw up some play in the dirt to get Tyreek the football so we can start getting some momentum. And that's what they did throughout the entire season. Only reason I didn't pick him for MVP is because there's a certain player that's on this list right now that's on the Offensive Player of the Year award that I picked for MVP. But I think by far that he truly deserves it whenever it comes to being Offensive Player of the Year, if the other guy gets the MVP.
I'm looking at these stats and I'm thinking just about any other year, this dude would win it hands down. It's just there's other players that have just done crazy stuff this year too. So that's the only thing that goes against him.
This could have been such a great year in the NFL.
What is the record for receptions? Because he's got to be close to it. I mean, I don't know what the actual record is.
I think it's 147 by Michael Thomas, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, I forgot. He had that monster season. Yeah.
Just slant merchants. That's who gets it. You're not going to get it by a receiver like this that goes downfield and pushes the ball as far as he can. The only reason that he has so many receptions on the Dolphins is because we would just feed him that much, even though he was going deep. It was constantly going 10 plus yards downfield. If he was having to play with Drew Brees in the back half of his career, he would have like 200 receptions.
The top 3 were all over 140, so
that's crazy. 140 receptions.
It was Michael Thomas, Cooper Kupp, and then Marvin Harrison. So.
Well, let's move on to the next one. The last one of the Offensive Players of the Year. Jason picked CeeDee Lamb, who also Look at his receiving yards. We should have been
Yeah.
giving him some more credit too.
I almost picked him. I really did. I was close.
But Jason, let's hear it, buddy. What you got?
I mean, him and Tyreek Hill had very similar stats. I mean, he had 50 less yards than Tyreek Hill, one less receiving touchdown, more receptions.
Yeah.
And then he also had the 2 rushing touchdowns where they would do jet sweeps and whatnot. And I think he had over 100 rushing yards this year, as well. So I've just like Gavin was saying with Tyreek Hill carrying the Dolphins offense at times, CeeDee Lamb did the exact same thing for the Cowboys. Because there were games where Tony Pollard was not getting it done in the run game and they didn't have a choice but to throw the ball. And it seemed like CeeDee Lamb got open every single game. He would get open multiple times for big plays. I mean, I know that for a fact because I had him on my fantasy team and he got a ton of points most weeks. So
I think it's interesting too because like it just seemed like the Cowboys played great obviously during the regular season, and then of course they didn't do good against the Packers in the playoffs, and then the games that they did lose, it seemed like the games that they lost were the games that Dak and CeeDee Lamb were not on the same page. So anytime that they were clicking, they were winning just about, and just wow, 135 receptions. Now I wonder. We got to remember Tyreek Hill did miss a couple games because of injury. I wonder if he would have maybe possibly have passed the receptions that CeeDee Lamb got, but even still, just comparing stats alone without knowing that, yeah, you would think CeeDee Lamb has the better stats here. Just insane.
I would disagree on that.
Well, that's your
Jason was
bias.
right though. That is bias. Jason is right though. CeeDee Lamb had 113 yards rushing. Tyreek Hill had 15. So
He had more combined yards than.
Yep, CeeDee Lamb had more total yards than Tyreek Hill this year.
And he had 16 more receptions, but yet 50 less receiving yards. So I'll say that Tyreek Hill was definitely the better receiver this year.
Tyreek Hill had one.
Here we
Tyreek Hill
go.
had one more.
Hang on. We're not doing wide receiver of the year. We're doing offensive player of the year.
Yeah, but how can you be the offensive player of the year whenever you're not even the best player at your own position for that season? That's my argument.
Let it begin. Let the arguments begin.
I mean, him having less. I mean, obviously, his yards per catch is greater, but that's like just saying he gets more deep balls and medium balls. Whereas, like, you're still a good receiver catching short passes and getting yards. Like you're.
You're a great receiver, but I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to try and say that he's got better stat line, I mean, he's got 16 less catches and 50 more yards.
I think that just means that Tyreek Hill is better runs after catcher of the year. CeeDee Lamb caught the ball more times, so it's harder to catch the ball. Running after you have the ball in your hand, running's not that bad. It's just you got to get in your hands first.
One thing that also helped CeeDee Lamb is he got to play the Commanders' defense twice this year.
That is true.
Because you got to remember,
the
game that Tyreek Hill had against the Commanders was incredible, and he only got to play them once. So
yeah, but he also got to play the Broncos.
Yeah, that game where they scored 70. Yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that game.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm surprised you to put that at game of the year. The Dolphins beat the Broncos 70-20.
As much as I love that game, I also did not actually get to watch it happen live. So that's the only reason it wasn't on there. Because I was actually in the parking lot about to go watch the Chiefs play the Bears whenever that game was going on, and people kept blowing my phone up, and I had no idea what was happening.
I think also that game, all of our game of the year picks were like games that were actually good. Like that game was just destruction.
That made the biggest troll though for Gavin to make that his game of the year against Jason.
And in turn,
Jason did pick a troll game for me. Yeah.
Well, that's not a troll game. I didn't mean for it to be a game where the Dolphins lost, even though we have developed a major rivalry between the two of us this year.
Yeah, you'll have. All right,
could have done something hilarious. Jason could have picked the Broncos Dolphins game as his game of the year and really threw a loop at it.
Yeah.
Threw everybody for a wrench in the plans.
All right, let's move on. We got defensive players of the year. We got Deron Bland, Myles Garrett, and T.J. Watt on here.
Ron Bland is not deserved.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
If you have the most picks, does not mean you're the best defensive player of the year at all.
So
he also all of his interceptions came from just like awful passes. It was never just him like reading the defense great and getting it. It was always just a really bad pass that he just happened to be in the area for.
And he just happened to have a lane open to the end zone.
Yeah.
I remember at midseason, I was saying that maybe we should have considered Deron Bland, but then I watched some of those other games that he played. He was great at getting picks, but he was not good at actually covering wide receivers. He was letting them get too open.
Yeah. I remember in the Seahawks Cowboys game, they were fucking touting Deron Bland so much before that because I think he had just broken the pick six, where he had tied the pick six record of the year.
Yeah.
And they were like, Seahawks better watch out for Deron Bland the whole time. And I think he did get one pick that game. But most every play that we got big, DK Metcalf went off on that game. Every one of those times DK Metcalf went off, he was just beating the shit out of Deron Bland. Leaving him in the dust.
DK Metcalf does that a lot, though. Oh,
yeah.
Actually beat him. He does fight a lot.
Oh no, not actually fight him. He just actually outplayed him. That was, I think, DK Metcalf's best game was against the Cowboys against Deron Bland. So,
and this is another one that you can't put Deron Bland as the best defensive player of the year. He wasn't the best defensive player on his team.
Mm-hmm.
Micah Parsons clearly is more deserving for a defensive player of the year award than Deron Bland would ever be. I think Tyler's smoking that crack for this pick that he likes to hit before. Sometimes he throws in some statistics or something like that. It's just his usual MO right here.
I think he was. I think he was too focused on just hey, he got a bunch of pick sixes, but broke the record. I get why he picked him, but again, I feel like the best corners in the leagues are the ones that you barely ever hear about because that means they're actually covering their guy. They're not throwing that way. Obviously, because he got all these picks, they were throwing his way, and the throw wasn't good or whatever, and it ended up being a pick. So that's why we know so much about him. But yeah, he just did not cover people very well. So this is one of the ones I definitely disagree with.
He's got the room like Trayvon Diggs had last year to be able to take the risk of jumping routes all the time, mainly because they're going to throw his way more. Stephon Gilmore was locking up the receiver on the other side of the field. The entire year, that's what was happening. The other side of the field, Stephon Gilmore is doing his thing, and Deron Bland is just able to sit on the opposite side and just hope to jump the route.
Romeo Doubs cooked Stephon Gilmore all game.
Okay, outside of that one time that Romeo Doubs cooked Stephon Gilmore, I guess he was locking down receivers all year.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to the next one. Myles Garrett. Gavin and Ryan picked Myles Garrett for Defensive Player of the Year. Good pick. I considered him too. Just he didn't seem to do as much in the second half of the season to me. He had a bigger first half. So,
but I believe it was injury that kind of held him back there.
Yeah.
It was tough. And the thing is, my second pick did not get picked by any of you guys. Max Crosby was my next guy up. For sure. Just playing 100% of the snaps for majority of the season. I think only reason he didn't play 100% of the defensive snaps they had this year was because of injury. But he was a heck of a player this year too. But Myles Garrett, I saw him. I think there's 2 blocked field goals that you may be missing on here as well whenever it comes to his stats. But he was just a complete game wrecker throughout the season. The sacks don't do it justice. The amount of disruptions that he had, the amount of times that he had to get double teamed while getting chipped off the line of scrimmage, how many times their offenses had to completely draw up the way they play around where he's at on the field. He was just a monster this season. And I would definitely be voting for him for Defensive Player of the Year if I had a vote, but we're not that big in the media yet.
Or ever. But
wherever. There's a chance it's ever.
Okay.
We're going to say optimism.
Well, we'll never be able to do it if Tyler is on the podcast because he has the most out there picks of all time. They won't respect it.
We'll never be able to get it because of Matthew's Tua gang sign thing earlier.
No, that's not even top 10 worst things that I've said on this podcast.
It's pretty up there for me.
Remember when you laughed at cancer, Steven?
That's fair. That's fair. I did not laugh at cancer. I did not laugh at
Bad
cancer.
guy, this Steven guy right here. Bad guy right here.
No,
I'm sorry, Steven.
we would get canceled
Oh
easily.
my
all of us.
god!
Yeah.
This
For all
goes
because
so
all because
quick.
you made jokes about 9/11.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that. There's been a
way
lot
too
of
many
that.
jokes about 9/11. Jesus.
All
Christ.
We've
right.
made too many 9/11 and Make-A-Wish jokes on this podcast. We need to
All
cut
right.
those numbers down.
Oh.
Moving on,
Those are
let's go on to
numbers.
the last player for defensive player of the year. Matthew, Jason, and I all picked T.J. Watt for defensive player of the year. Let's hear what y'all got.
More sacks, more tackles, same amount of fumbles, more fumble recoveries, more touchdowns than the last guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's just better in every single category. I get the whole Gavin's argument with him. I mean, he's in the backfield every play, but so is TJ Watt, though.
Yep.
TJ Watt is doing the same thing. He's just a wrecker of the offense.
He is so scary to watch. Like, I can't imagine actually being behind center and just like having that dude just fucking bomb rushing.
Imagine you're a quarterback and
Sure,
you
he
make
got
eye
hurt, too.
contact. Yeah, he got hurt before the playoffs. I
Yeah.
think they might have had a chance against the Bills if he would have been healthy, considering it
Should've-
was a
yeah.
close game at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just his stats were better in legitimately like out of 10 categories, he had better stats in 9 of them.
I want to do just a little bit of a Google search because I have a feeling. I think Myles Garrett missed a ton of games this year, though. That was if I'm going to make an argument for him.
I could pull it up real quick. It would
Yeah,
take me
I'm
about
very slow whenever it comes to typing. I'm trying to look it up this year. I'm trying to look it up right now.
I'm gonna beat you to it. I'm already almost there. Let's see. Oh, this is
Can't even pick.
postseason. Regular season. He missed 1 game.
Well, never mind.
I don't think he would have gotten 5 sacks in 1 game.
He could have.
I mean,
No.
legitimately, I think he had like 3 in a couple. So he does.
Top 5.
If any of them have the chance, both of these guys have the chance to be able to go out and get 5 sacks in a single game. Both
You
of them
see-
do. I'm
did
not
you
going to
see
even sit
some
here
of-
and try and.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I'm not going to argue against TJ Watt having the opportunity to win Defensive Player of the Year. I think he is definitely up there. I find it odd that edge rushers are pretty much, it's either the league leader in interceptions or edge rushers are the only ones that get looked at for Defensive Player of the Year. I think Mike linebackers need to possibly get a chance at it. But this year was a down year for Mike's, so it doesn't even matter what that argument is. TJ Watt had a heck of a season. For me, it was purely based off of the amount of times that Myles Garrett had to turn into just an absolute game record to keep the Browns in games. Offensively, they were getting some help by Joe Flacco saying, F it, we ball. But I would still, in my opinion, I'm going to put it on to Myles Garrett. But yeah, stats-wise, TJ Watt had a heck of a season.
I was just going to throw out that I do think some of these guys could easily get 5 sacks in 1 game, looking at some of the abysmal offensive lines that were out there this year.
Yeah, if they played the Titans, they could probably get 10.
10 is a little much. Don't give us that much hate, but 5 is possible. All
You
right.
ain't got to throw it out there on them like that.
Yeah. I don't know why I started a war with people, but all right. All right, so next up we got Most Valuable Player, the final award. And obviously we've already seen these guys earlier in Offensive Player of the Year. You got Lamar Jackson for 3 of us, and CMC, Christian McCaffrey for the other 3. You got me, Jason, and Ryan on Lamar Jackson, then Tyler, Gavin, and Matthew for Christian McCaffrey. So let's start out with Lamar Jackson again. These are the exact same slides, just used again, basically. So, similar stats. I guess what was y'all's reasoning for picking Lamar?
I think out of the great player options, like CMC is also a great player, obviously. I picked him for Offensive Player of the Year. But the 49ers have other like big weapons on their offense. It isn't just CMC. It's not just the CMC show on offense. They got Devo, they got Ayuk, they got Brock Purdy somehow doing shit. They got Kittle. I mean, yeah, the fucking Ravens have some players that did some shit every now and then this year, but nobody compares to fucking Lamar Jackson with his stats and his abilities on that Ravens offense. I think he single-handedly. I mean, not as much as some other offenses, but I think he carried that fucking Ravens offense for a lot of the years.
I mean,
And
Ryan said exactly what I was going to say. Basically, it really felt like Lamar put the team on his back for most of the season to get them to where they got. And the one game where he wasn't able to do that just happened to be in the playoffs.
I think for me, it was just 90% of Lamar is just so fun to watch play. Just, I mean, his ability to just fucking take off and run is incredible to watch. And then, a lot of people were saying that he can't throw very well. He had some good receivers this year, and look what he was able to do. They were really good at throwing the ball too. And again, their running game was decent, and I was surprised they went away from it in the playoffs. And I think that's kind of what hurt him was he didn't play very well in that last game. But overall, just the whole season, he was playing like just one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So that's why I picked Lamar.
Also, don't forget, we don't have it up there because it's not as impressive looking, but he did have 13 receiving yards this year too.
Caught his own ball. Yeah. Yeah.
I think one thing we got to remember whenever it comes to these awards, it's just looking at their regular season stats. So I did not take into account him losing in the playoffs. I didn't take into account the Chiefs game whenever I made my pick. I will say that Lamar had a heck of a season this year, but I guess I'll make my discussion about the MVP.
Yeah. Let's move on.
I'll just say you can go to the next slide. It's fine. What I'm gonna say makes sense to be on this slide too.
Okay.
If it's not Lamar Jackson that wins MVP, it should be Christian McCaffrey.
I agree.
That's all I gotta say.
I 100% agree. Because he was my number 2 for MVP, but who actually picked MVP is Tyler, Matthew, and Gavin. So let's hear y'all's piece on it.
I think whenever I think of the MVP award, it has become a quarterback award because, yes, no matter how you skin it, the guy that touches the ball every single play is always the most valuable player on any team. The quarterback is always the most valuable player. I feel like it has been way overblown out of proportion this is supposed to be the best player award, if I'm not mistaken. Like this should be who is the most valuable to their team, because every quarterback is always just desperately valuable. But the way I look at the MVP award, if you take a mid-level player and put them at that position in that same team, in that same offense, or in that same defense, how much does that team change? In my opinion, like I said earlier, the 49ers, I think I might have said it before the podcast, the 49ers do not have a great offensive line across the board. In fact, they don't have a good offensive line across the board. They have one Hall of Fame left tackle, and that is it. The rest of their offensive linemen are all mid-level guys. If you put just a middle-of-the-road running back in that backfield, they wouldn't be able to move the ball in the ground game. It would never go. It would never work. He pops off so many runs. Whenever it comes to the passing game, you put a mid-level running back there, the amount of routes that he's able to run, the amount of offense that they're able to draw up specifically for him changes my perspective whenever it comes for the MVP voting. I feel like the Ravens have a very stellar wide receiver core that they built together this year. Yes, it's young, but they did do a smart thing by getting a veteran Odell Beckham Jr. in that room. And they have 2 great tight ends, good running back core. Yes, you don't get the same running ability by any other quarterback if you put a mid-level quarterback in there. But I feel like they would still be pretty good without Lamar. I think the entirety of the 49ers run game just goes out the window if you take Christian McCaffrey away from this season.
I think the opposite. I think if you replace Lamar with a mid-level person, Ravens would do much worse than the 49ers would with a mid-running back. Because I think the 49ers receiving core is much better than and the Ravens receiving core is great this year because they have Lamar Jackson throwing to them.
I just want to throw it out there.
Yeah,
Christian McCaffrey had 21 of the total
game run.
Oh,
we're gonna let laggy Gavin talk first.
Well, go ahead, Matthew.
There you go.
No, don't let leggy Gavin talk. No, I stepped all over Matthew. Got it. You got it, man.
I was just going to throw out there. Christian McCaffrey has 21 of the 49ers total 60 touchdowns. That's across ground and receiving yards. But I think Gavin's right. If you put somebody that's mid-level, I don't want to throw a name out there and just shit on some running back, but if you put a mid-level running back in Christian McCaffrey's spot, yes, they're still going to move the ball because their team is insanely good. But their rushing totals are going to just plummet. I mean, he had 14 rushing touchdowns, 7 receiving touchdowns just in the regular season. I think he had maybe 1 or 2 of the rushing touchdowns in the postseason. But Lamar, yes, he's amazing. They wouldn't be able to run triple option stuff like they have. Their rushing attack would deplete. But if you put in a decent quarterback on the Ravens organization, I think that they still have success because they also have an amazing team. So, like we've already said, this Will Ward it's one of these two guys. I don't think anybody's really going to complain. I think Christian McCaffrey was more dominant the entire season, and Lamar more picked it up halfway through the season because he didn't have but about, I think it was 7 or 8 touchdowns going into week 9. I want to say it was. So up until the last season, or up until the end of the season. Actually, what week did they play the Dolphins, Gavin?
What the Ravens? We played week.
That was like 14 or 15.
I want to say weeks.
Oh well, then it was
no, it was
that.
16. I think it was one of the last 3 games. It was the last 3 games. No, it was week 17. Week 17.
No, it was the third to last game. No, yeah, you're right. No, this is including postseason. Yeah, you're right.
That's including
he had
it was our right
before
we played the Bills.
Big games. But basically, what I was trying to get at, he had a couple of big games where he had 4 or 5 touchdown passes, which boosted his stats a ton. So
what you're saying is McCaffrey was more dominant throughout the season, but Lamar had the more dominant moments.
Yes, yeah, 100%.
Gotcha. No, I get that.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
There was only one game where he had more than like 4 or 5 touchdowns, and that was the Dolphins game.
Yep. That Vic Fangio defense was really they were humming that game.
He was like kind of hit. I mean, there was several like the first. I mean, like
there's a lot of games that he didn't do a lot.
Well, yeah. Your point. There really is. I mean, the first fucking 6 weeks, it was 0 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 0 touchdowns, 1 touchdown. So yeah, he was definitely more on and off. But
yeah, for me, it was 100% Lamar. Is when he balls out, he is incredible to watch. So again, it was more just not so much the stats across the board for me for Lamar. It was more just he's incredible to watch, and so is CMC. But and I definitely think, without a doubt, there should be no argument here, at least for the 49ers at the bare minimum. Christian McCaffrey is by far the best player, and he's better than almost anybody else in the league. And you could definitely argue him for MVP. I would be totally happy if Christian McCaffrey won MVP, and it'd be great to see it go to somebody that isn't a quarterback.
That's what I was about to say. I just really don't want to see another quarterback win. But it's not always the quarterback. I mean, let's be honest. Everybody knows.
This is another time where it comes down to the title of the award makes it to where it's impossible to give to some other people. Like I said earlier, the most valuable player is always going to be the guy that touches the ball every play, and I'm not talking about the center. It's the quarterback. The most valuable player on every single team is the quarterback. You go as far as your quarterback lets you. But if we're talking about who the best is and who the award technically is supposed to go to based on how it's been treated in the past, it's Christian McCaffrey whenever it comes to being the best player in the league this year, being the most valuable player for his team specifically this year.
All right. Well, I believe that is it, y'all. That's the last slide. So there are awards. So how you guys feeling about everything? Good? Bad?
I feel good about
I feel like if we were in person right now, we would have fought.
We would have had a little bit of a fight, yeah.
Gavin,
like we would have had some scuffles.
Gavin and I would have been throwing hands pretty much in the first 30 seconds.
Oh, 1,000%. I fully see it.
All I learned today is that none of us are on the same page about defense at all. It's offense. We're all on the same page, but
well, that's not true at all. We got into an argument about CeeDee Lamb versus Tyreek Hill.
That's true.
That was just Gavin versus everybody else, though.
Oh, I picked Tyreek.
But did you? Oh,
I didn't pick either, but I mean, looking at those stats, I was like, I would have probably felt bad for overlooking CeeDee Lamb when I was potentially picking because I didn't consider him at all. And then looking at that, I'm like, wow, he did have an incredible year. But all right, well, that's it. Ryan, you want to take us out?
Sure. Thanks everybody for watching the NFL Always Out of Market podcast. Not sponsored by the NFL. We're not affiliated with them at all. Just want to make sure that clarify that real quick. Come and tune in next week, I guess, when we're all kind of sad about talking about the Super Bowl and having a lot of fun. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Everybody, hands in, say football on 3. 1, 2, 3. Football!
Football!
Football.